Hi, I'm Charlotte Merrill, and this is our So Let's Be Friends podcast. This is a place where everyone belongs, and every story matters. Together we celebrate our differences, bring awareness to disabilities, and build a more inclusive and supportive world. One conversation at a time, let's open our hearts and listen with kindness.
I like when people ask me about my crutches because they can get to know me, and I like having friends, so let's be friends.
This life is beautiful, and you are wonderful.
Hey friends, welcome back to So Let's Be Friends, where we show up for each other and learn real stories and important conversations. Today I'm talking with my dad, Loren Merrill, who loves world and American history and enjoys teaching these topics at the high school, including politics, government, and freedom. We're celebrating 250 years since the beginning of our country and the Declaration of Independence, and talking about what freedom and equality really mean and how we're still learning and growing. Dad, I'm so happy that you're here.
I'm happy to be here.
And Mom, too.
I love always getting to be with being your sidekick.
Dad, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you love teaching history and government?
Well, my name is Loren Merrill. I've been teaching high school history and government and politics for 23 years. It's just been a passion of mine ever since I was a teenager when I learned about it in high school, and then spent a couple years living in the former East Germany. Really helped me really inspired me to be interested in government and freedoms and what it does to people and to their mindsets and how they live as a people.
What makes you passionate about the Declaration of Independence?
Well, the Declaration of Independence is still to this day a one-of-a-kind document. It was a group of people who were dissatisfied with how their lives were and how they were being treated and the freedoms that they didn't have and the things that they were being told what to do. And so they came together and started a movement of freedom, of being able to say what they wanted and believe what they wanted and not being controlled by somebody else. And so it was a document that really changed the world. First of its kind in the world, where the people took control and told their government that we don't like what you're doing to us, and so we're going to start our own government.
It's pretty powerful.
It is very powerful. We don't really understand. We take it for granted. We've just always grown up with the Declaration of Independence, when in the course of human events. But it really was a huge leap of faith that this group of people, mostly young men, backed by their families, by their wives, by the women in their life. Sometimes you forget about that, but they all had women behind them who supported them and let them be gone to be able to do these things while they took care of the farms and the family and all the different things. It was a sacrifice by everybody. It was a definite leap of faith by our founding fathers with the Declaration of Independence. And that's why it is so important for world history, where now it's become the model around the whole world as far as how the United States does freedom and how it's grown into it over the years.
Wow. Thank you. What did freedom mean when our country first began?
Well, the freedom in our country has definitely changed over the years. It has actually gotten more and more expanded. When again, when the country first started, it was a totally new concept that the people would have the freedom. And one of the biggest freedoms that they didn't have before that they had afterwards was the freedom to criticize the government, to criticize their leaders, and to be able to say the things. And and it's something that has grown over the years, because even one of our founding fathers, John Adams, who helped write the Declaration of Independence and helped to write the Constitution, who was also our second president, when we had our first crisis in the early 1800s when he was president, and people began to criticize him, unfortunately, he kind of reverted to old style, where he put laws into place that punished people for criticizing the government, which is exactly what is not supposed to happen. So it is definitely something, and I think our founding fathers would be amazed at the freedoms that we have today to speak, in our social media and the many outlets and platforms that we have to express our opinions and to say the things that we want to say, whether they be good things or bad things. And that's really one of the things that has grown over the years. Is at first, most people were very similarly minded when it came to religion and beliefs and the view on the family, the nuclear family. And so a lot of the speech outside of the normal lane was still oftentimes, I don't know if it was totally taken out by the government, but it was frowned upon by government. I don't know if they did things necessarily to stop it, but just by society in general, didn't allow a lot of people to have differing opinions. You had to kind of go along with the mainstream a lot of times when the country first began, because they had grown up. It was the culture to do what the government wanted and not to be able to criticize. And it's taken 2.5 centuries to evolve to the place where we're at right now.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you.
Were those freedoms available to everyone at that time?
Well, the shorter answer is no. One of the dynamics of when our country first began is citizenship, which is the ability to vote and to participate in government and in politics, was limited to men, and it was white men, and it was white men who had property or who had money at the time. And that was kind of where it started, coming from an aristocratic or a royalty type of system where it was the upper class, the rich, the privileged who had the rights. And so our country kind of started at that point as well. And, not to blame them or to criticize them, that's what they knew. But over the years, especially with people of color, with, getting rid of slavery, including giving the rights to vote for women, to Native Americans, to other minorities, at very first, those freedoms weren't available to everybody. And women's rights, there were some people complaining at the first, but it was more of a culture type of thing where women had a different role in society at the time. And most of the women weren't complaining at the time. There were some, but most weren't. But it wasn't until 1920 that women were given the right to vote in federal elections. And, that's 126 years ago, or 106 years ago. I'm a history teacher, not a math teacher. So for the first almost 150 years, women didn't have the right to vote.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
And then people of color, Black people, while they had the rights to vote by the late 1800s, Black men did, a lot of those they weren't allowed to exercise those because of different laws and prejudices that people had, even until the 1950s and 1960s, even into the 1970s. So just 50, 60 years ago. But
Wow.
in today's world, today's United States of America, there's no person, group of people, or faction of society that is denied their freedoms or their rights.
Oh,
It's pretty interesting, huh? Hearing how that history comes forward.
yeah.
It's been a 250-year experiment and work in progress.
I like that experiment.
Me too. Everything is an experiment. Right, Mama?
Yes, right.
Right, Dad?
Absolutely. That's trial. That's what we do. We live life and we trial and error a lot of times, isn't it?
Yeah.
We
We
figure-
don't know what things will turn out.
And if it doesn't, we pivot, we shift, and we try again, right?
Yep. And sometimes you have to stop and fight for things, huh? And to make your voices heard.
Yep.
To say that's not right and this is how we should do it.
Mm-hmm. How has our country grown in understanding freedom and equality over time?
Like we talked about before, it's been a 250-year progression of getting rights and freedoms to all factions of society. And some people would still argue there are still parts of society that don't have total freedoms. But a lot of the freedoms that have changed over time have been, well, some people would call them good, some people would call them bad. Our country was founded as a Christian country. And a lot of our laws and a lot of our freedoms were based upon Christian values and morals. And a lot of those things have gone away, especially in the last 50 years or so, where a lot of our laws that used to be based upon the Bible or Christianity have become a little more secular. And again, some people think that's a good thing. Other people think it's not such a good thing, where we've abandoned some of those morals. And there's definitely more freedoms now than ever before. Used to have, much more censorship when it came to the news and television and radio and newspapers. It wasn't that long ago that, things like pornographic magazines and things like that were illegal. And now those types of things are considered freedoms that you have, freedoms of speech. And again, some people think that's good. Some people think that's not so good.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely more now where people are allowed to express their opinions in just about any way, shape, or form that they want to now and express their ideas. And there's very little, if any, censorship from the government, especially with the advent of the internet. The internet expanded things greatly. Mom and I grew up in a time where you only had radio, television, and newspapers to get news. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have so many different ways and outlets, and so it's just expanded the repertoire of freedoms that people have and that they enjoy to express themselves.
Yeah. Yes, it's interesting. Mm-hmm. Can you share some important moments where rights expanded, like voting or equal rights?
Absolutely. So again, at the very beginning, it was men, white men of privilege or of money who owned property who were allowed to vote and allowed to express themselves. The original sin of the United States, what's called slavery or called the original sin, was where, a whole economic system where people owned other people. Obviously the wrong thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously. And unfortunately, it took a civil war in the United States. And, slavery is something that was practiced all around the world. It's been going on for centuries. It wasn't unique to the United States. But people saw and understood that it was not fair to own people. And so a group of people stood up and it started a civil war. And after the Civil War, in our government, the first three amendments to really target civil rights and to expand the rights for people were the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Abolishing slavery, guaranteeing citizenship, and then guaranteeing the right to vote to all people, well, except women at that time. It was still just men.
And those with special needs, we're forgetting that one.
That's way in the future.
I know, but I'm just saying they weren't even looked at as
They
people.
weren't even looked at as people yet. They were. We'll get some of those questions here in a few minutes. And
Yeah.
and then 1920 was the 19th Amendment, where it's called women's suffrage. And I always joke with my class that women's suffrage is having to put up with men, but it's just a fancy word that means to vote. But then also, even though women had the right to vote in 1920, many blacks were still, or former slaves were still denied the right to vote by some racist and not very nice people. Called Jim Crow laws, and segregation took place where there were still people in the government who couldn't understand that everybody should be equal. And the civil rights movement with historical figures like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and many other civil rights activists. By 1965, the Civil Rights Act was passed through the United States Congress, making it illegal, along with the 24th Amendment, to discriminate and keep people of color from voting through different means like poll taxes and grandfather clauses. And they had all these ridiculous things that were simply to keep black people from voting. And that was 1965. And again, and just because something happens at the legal level doesn't mean culturally that it's immediately implemented. It still takes some time. I was asking Harrison, our youngest son, the other day if he's ever seen Remember the Titans. And I don't think he has, where it's about integrating a school into blacks and whites in the the experience of the football team. And that was early 1970s. They were still trying to overcome and come together, black and white, and just treat all people equally and have equal rights. So it's a fairly modern and new experience. That's 50 years ago is all.
We'll have to watch that as a family because that's pretty important to our
Yeah.
250 years celebrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's that many.
And we
That
just
many
like
years.
football, right?
That many
You
years.
just like
We
football?
like sports, yes.
Charlotte's like, huh?
Do you love sports, Charlotte?
Yes.
She likes going to the football games and cheering and things.
Yeah. I think it's really fun.
And sports has been a place where a lot of integration and change has started. Jackie Robinson in the 1950s, the first black Major League Baseball player, with the rise of the NBA, with NCAA basketball and football, and where people could see, on the field that, hey, it didn't matter if you were black or white, if you could perform and do it, and everybody had the same abilities, so why wouldn't they have the same rights?
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where sports and Special Olympics, and then we've moved
Yep.
into Special Olympics Unified, so that's for everybody. It's not leaving anybody out. No segregation lines of
Nope.
special needs or not.
Nobody's
Yep.
It's neat that sports can bring the world together.
nobody is
Sports
left
has a great
behind.
power like that.
Sports can bring the world together, yeah. It's interesting. seeing that
Nobody
unification.
gets left behind.
Yep. Seeing what people's abilities are on the field or on the court, right?
Yep. Why does it take time for a country to grow in understanding?
Well, the simple answer to that is the human condition. People are human. People have preconceived ideas. You learn from when you're young. Monkey see, monkey do. And sometimes it's hard. Change is hard. It's hard to change things the way they used to be. Why are you doing like that? Because that's how people did it before. And coming up with new and revolutionary ideas is often difficult. And that's why Civil War, the Civil Rights Movement, the suffragettes, the women who, they had to fight. They had to demonstrate in it. The Women's Suffrage Amendment was introduced into Congress for 40 straight years. Every year for 40 years, they would go to Congress and say, hey, we women should be able to vote. And a short 40 years later, it finally passed. That's called perseverance, isn't it? And that was led by a woman named Elizabeth Cady Stanton, along with many other women who dedicated their lives to helping the country overcome its preconceived notion of the different roles in society for men and women. okay, to bring more equality, that women should be able to vote and be able to express their opinions and own property and do a lot of the different things that freedom entails.
I don't know if you remember, Charlotte, along these lines, when you graduated high school and you were turning 18, we had to get guardianship of our daughter with her disabilities and special needs. That's one of the things that people do, right? He just talked about it. You did it because someone else did it. But the reason we chose, and with Charlotte's support, we had to get lawyers and judges involved, but we chose to get guardianship. Why are you laughing?
Well, I'll just tell that story real quick from my perspective. So Charlotte, who is very special, especially to us, and has some special needs.
She has cerebral palsy.
A rare neurodegenerative disorder that exhibits a cerebral palsy. We were doing guardianship for her, meaning that we're there to help her to make decisions and to help her in her life. She's not quite ready to do it on her own yet. And
how do you feel about that? Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
You do a lot of things by yourself, but still some things, huh?
Are you opinionated though? She has lots of opinions. Are you opinionated?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she has lots to say. So.
Are you, Mom?
Yeah.
Are you Dad?
Yes. So we had worked with a lawyer, or I should say my wife had arranged for a lawyer. She took that lead on a lot of this. And I ran down there on my lunch break to sign the paperwork. And I just kind of just stamped it because that's the way it always was before. And Anna got there just after I did, not too long after, because with our busy schedules. She went to go sign. And I remember she called me and said, I didn't sign it. It didn't feel right to sign some of her rights away, because in that guardianship, the way things had always been done is if she's under guardianship, she doesn't have the right to vote.
It actually said in just fine print, and it was really interesting as I was reading through the paperwork, just checking off the list, like he said, just doing what everybody else did, following the path. As I was reading through that it bolded right off the paper. And I just saw it so strongly that it said it was actually taking her civil rights away. And I just pushed that back and I said, I can't do that. I just didn't feel right about it. And that was the rule. And so.
That's the way it always been done. But long story short, led by this beautiful lady over here and Charlotte's strong will and opinions also.
I'm going to say this strong woman right here.
You know, they put her through a series of investigations,
brought an investigator
and interviews, and rocked the boat a little bit.
We had neurologists get involved and write letters and all kinds of things from the hospitals.
And it culminated with a law.
What happened? Where did she go? Where did you go? Do you remember where we went? And we took a crew with us. We didn't just go the two of us. What did we do?
Do you remember?
We went to the state capitol.
State capitol.
And she had a speech ready. She was going to speak in front of the Senate. And we spent all the time in the lobby waiting for her turn. And there was probably a dozen of us because we brought others with special needs as well. And we brought part of our Special Olympics Unified team.
Yes,
and we went through security, did all the things. We sat in the lobby waiting for Charlotte's turn to support her in front of the Senate to give her speech. And tell me what happened the day before, that Wednesday before. And this is the day, if you want to look it up in history, it was the same day that the Suns, the gorilla was there, the Suns team was there, and it was the day that the Suns received their own personal holiday in Arizona. So we got to hang out with the Suns. It wasn't a miserable day. It was a really fun time. But that day, that was a Thursday, the Wednesday before, somebody was, what's it called? Not exiled.
Oh, expelled.
I can use the word exiled. It's
It
a little
works,
stronger
either
than
one.
that. But a woman was expelled from the Senate.
Yes.
And so it pushed all the bills, if I'm saying this right, to that Thursday. So it pushed Charlotte later on the docket to get to speak. It felt like it hurt. It felt a little frustrating, but that ended up being the biggest blessing in disguise because Charlotte didn't get to speak in front of the Senate that day. But all the legislature, everyone kept coming out from bathroom breaks because they heard there's this amazing girl in the lobby that was sharing her story over and over and over. And she was getting to just visit. She just had conversations.
Just one-on-one time with them too.
With all the legislatures and just got to visit with the Senate, with the people there. And I have videos and pictures. It was such a special experience. They were visiting with Charlotte and her friends and the team. And by the end of the day, the end of the conversation, they got her email, they got her information. They had her mail her speech. And then the last thing, I remember it just touched my heart. They started pulling pictures out of their phone, some of them their wallets, because still old fashioned, but
That's the way it's always been done.
Yeah, but they were pulling pictures out showing several of them of grandkids that they had with special needs, and they didn't know about the outdated law with guardianship, and they said they would have not known until it got to their grandchild. So they actually thanked Charlotte for bringing forth an outdated law that needed to be looked at. And that was in April, and by June we were getting emails and texts and phone calls. Did you see the news that Charlotte had helped change an outdated law? And I just thought that was super cool. So guardianship changed, and she was able to keep her civil rights and have guardianship. And right now we're going through guardianship with Caroline, and I can't believe how much simpler it is this time. We're not getting lawyers for each of us. We have to get a lawyer for that who's going through guardianship to make sure their rights are protected, which is amazing. But it's such a simpler process, and it's, yeah, my kids get to keep their civil rights now. So we're pretty excited.
It will just keep being simple and simple.
Yep.
I don't know if life's ever going to be simple, but it's going to be a different path. You change that path. We felt uncomfortable with just doing what the other people did. It
wasn't just simple for me.
Oh, it's not simple. Lots of tears, lots of heartache, right? Lots of money.
Even though simples are simples, they can be hard too.
Simple things can definitely be hard.
Especially, well, when you don't take the typical path and do what the rest of the world did.
It seems so simple to think that, oh, people with special needs, they may walk slower, they may talk slower, they maybe can't walk or can't talk, but they still have the ability to have an opinion and should be part of society and part of government and politics.
Yeah,
seems so simple to us now, but that wasn't the case for over 200 years in our country.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of places.
Nope.
And I don't know what the laws are in other states.
Well, there are other states have different laws. That's where I started to recognize that it doesn't have to be like this.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Every state's a little bit different. But.
So yeah, look at your laws. Find out, what the guardianship rules on that. Don't just follow the beaten path. If you don't be afraid to change rules and laws. I find myself as a rule follower. But if I find a rule doesn't work, I figure out how to change it so I can follow it.
And interestingly, the lawyer that we hired to do it, he doesn't do it anymore because of that, because it's too much work now. It's not just
a lot of work.
Just
the
cookie cutter.
Thick. Yeah.
It's not just the cookie cutter like what it used to be. Now it's every person is treated as an individual, not as a group. And so
special needs should be treated like everybody else.
But also at the same time with Caroline, is it okay to share the story about what happened this week?
Sure. I don't even know. Go ahead.
Yeah, where you showed up to start Caroline's process and to renew hers, and the judge, knowing, said we don't even need to get a lawyer for her to move forward, that Charlotte's already set the precedent on what to do.
Well, we have to get a lawyer for Caroline.
Yeah.
But I don't have to get a lawyer for myself. Yeah. I just need to know how to do the paperwork. Caroline has to have a lawyer to defend herself, to make sure I'm not pushing her into guardianship. But before, we had to get investigators, 2 lawyers. It got really expensive. Yeah.
Long story short, the process is much simpler now 4 years later than it was 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So, hooray for Charlotte.
That was just 4 years ago?
It was 4 years ago.
How does the idea of all people are created equal include individuals with disabilities and special needs?
Well, in our founding documents, it talks about how all men are created equal. But at the time, it was a whole different vision of what men were created equal. And we've talked about it as we've gone along. People with different skin colors, people that spoke different. And, it wasn't just people of color that were discriminated against. It was people of different religions. It was people who talked different. People who had different ideas were often discriminated. And again, that's part of the human condition of the way things used to always be. The world used to be a much, much worse place than what it is today.
Well, I have to say, when we did a family trip 2 years ago and we got to Liberty Island, and it still makes me emotional thinking about it, and he's just laughing because it hurt. But when we went through Liberty Island and went through the tour there, our family would have not made it through. Because I had 3 kids with special needs, with disabilities. And they would have let my husband through, and they would have let Kalisha through, and John and Austin, maybe, but they also had some psychological issues. I don't know. That would kind of would be iffy. But the 3 kids, my 3 youngers, are Charlotte, Caroline, and Harrison.
It would have been a turn right around. They
would have left us. They would have told us to get back on a ship and go away. And so that was a huge discrimination. I kind of left that place in tears, and I thought I was going to be lifted up and excited seeing where our country started.
She was a little bit angry.
I was pretty angry. It hurt to see that our family wasn't valued or wanted. And it still happens when you walk into stores. I've been asked that we're in the way to move out of the way of the aisles at Bethlehem, different stores. We are a different family. We function differently, and it's okay.
Everybody does.
Everybody does, but we've learned to quit apologizing for our family, just tell people thanks for being patient.
And it has gotten better over the years as far as access and people's attitude towards it as well, where more and more people being included. Because again, it's been a 250-year progression of including all peoples and, including minorities, women, people of different religions, races, creeds, colors, and people of different abilities to be included in society at different levels in different ways. To the inclusion model is, the wave of the future. It's discrimination when somebody gets discriminated against because of their abilities, because of something out of their control. And it's a work in progress and getting better all the time. And there's still obstacles in the way, but moving in the right direction.
And I love that phrase, all people created equal. And that does include individuals with disabilities and special needs. It's taken a while for the rest of the world to understand that. And I just really appreciate that we're having this conversation. It's a little bit of a tough conversation, but we're so thrilled to celebrate 250 years of our country and the growth. Amen. So we're going to have to continue this conversation later. We're already getting long. So we will continue this. We're going through the 4th of July, celebrating our country's birthday. So we'll continue this.
It's so exciting. Thank you, Dad, so much for sharing your knowledge and your heart today. It's important to remember where we started and also how much we've grown. How we can keep growing to include everyone. Happy birthday, USA! 250 years! If you'd like to learn more about our mission or connect with some support, visit www.merrillbuds.org. Thank you for listening, for sharing, and for believing in a world where everyone belongs. And as always, let's be friends!
Woo! You're so cute. I love it.
Thank you, Mama. If you're listening, thank you for being a part of this. We are excited to share more stories and more truth and more love in every episode. Until next time, love one another, and like I say, so let's be friends.